Hello and welcome to episode 126 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your Tame Foundry author, Drogyn1701. With me is the Oscar winner for Best Graphic Designer in a pod or video cast with less than 100 viewers, Greendragoon.
Hey, we slightly occasionally get more than 100 viewers.
Slightly occasionally when we have, crazy awesome guests on or something like that. And okay. Also with me is a man whose performance of Star Trekking Across the Universe at the awards show was met with critical acclaim, Markhawkman.
Yeah, so some people don't understand subtle humor.
And joining us tonight, please welcome back PaxFederatica.
Hello, everyone.
All right. Well, to start off with tonight, we are in a very nice map made by Sirboulevard. This is his Odyssey Lounge. You can find it in the Foundry. It is out of the review tab, so check the browse all and search Odyssey Lounge or by his author name. But let's take a look around. Obviously, he built this to be like a 10 forward kind of an area for the Odyssey class, which of course just got the nice nifty updates. Obviously not a 10 forward because this is not a forward area. This is aft. You can see out the window. We appear to be on the saucer somewhere on the back end of it.
I think we were meant to be just above the shuttle bay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I think I can see the top of the shuttle bay doors from here.
There's a pretty nifty use of the ground scale assets. Obviously, we're also inside the ESD docking area, which I think technically the Odyssey class can't fit into, but never mind. We'll let him get away with that one.
It did actually sit in our space dock when they first released it.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was one of the ones that Taco said was too big.
No, when they first released it, they put it on display.
I don't know.
But either way.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got these nice use of the pillars to break up the windows there.
Mm-hmm.
And TOS style things there.
These are don't
click on the glowing wall because that'll probably end the map.
Where did these tables come from? I'm looking
the Defiant.
At them. Really?
The Defiant tables.
I mean, Defiant tables aren't they labeled as TOS tables?
Nope, Defiant. Well, I'm not sure what exactly. I think it's just labeled as tabled or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see them in the Belfast interior.
Okay. I'm looking at them, and they remind me of the tables we had in grade school in the cafeteria.
I'm sure a similar design philosophy went into the Defiant.
Similar cost cutting, I suppose, right?
These over here are kind of weird in comparison because they have a very thick tabletop. It's almost like a stone slab with a glowing stripe.
You wonder if maybe there's not like a computer or something in there.
You know, it does kind of look like something that you would expect to have a computer console embedded in.
Yeah. Like there should be a little, like a touchscreen or something on the top of it where you can order drinks and stuff.
Or maybe have a replicator embedded in the table.
Wasn't there an episode of Enterprise where they ran across a station that had replicators in the middle of the table?
Yeah, but that was also the episode where the space station decided it wanted to use their brains for computer chips.
Yes. Well, just Travis's brain, though, wasn't it?
I think two people. One of which was, of course, a crewman who received a name just long enough for people to mention he was dead.
Don't name the red shirts. You'll just become attached.
Red stripes in Enterprise, I guess. I do like how he's made sort of banks of replicators here instead of just using one.
It's cool, yeah.
That's a good idea. All right, so
I'm
we
kind
have
of wondering why they're all the way over there. It seems odd, the placement.
Well,
Well, he's got them placed all around the walls here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And for non-replicated stuff, we have a bar. We should point out that the Borg bartender is actually Mark's bridge officer. It's not part of the map.
but Sirboulevard totally should put in a board.
Yes,
bartender.
absolutely.
Like the best idea ever.
These other NPCs are scattered around here are his creations, though.
I'm not
President
sure they're
OK.
scattered as he wanted them to be.
No, looks like there's a fight about to break out.
Wait, it's Councilman Mercer Ferris, Prime Minister Imrella. They look like they're kind of angrily yelling at each other.
I take it these are characters from his mission.
Must be.
I am kind of wondering why they're standing so closely grouped together, though. Seems a bit odd.
Some of these guys look familiar.
Yeah, I believe these are some of the characters that
Secret
he has co-opted from you
That's okay. I
The
didn't
Secret
have-
Service
with
guy
your permission.
is
course.
dressed like one of the Men in Black.
Now, did he say that he had originally created this for a specific mission he was doing?
You know, I don't remember. But it certainly could be useful for a scene. Obviously, we've got, you've got a lot of space to work with. Nice couches, nice poker tables, pool table, lots of good stuff.
I feel the need to point out that this squiggly couch design is something from the Starbase Sierra / pre-launch style maps.
Oh, yeah.
This was in the upper lounge of Earth Space Dock, the original one.
I believe that there was an identical couch there, yes.
I imagine it was used several times.
Yeah.
I know I have used it
Yep.
several times in my Foundry missions. It's a useful little...
Actually,
decorative thing.
it's also found in one of the STF missions. The one where you're going around the inside of that space station trying to save the space station personnel from being assimilated by the Borg. You see
Yeah.
this couch in there because that space station actually borrows part of the Starbase 39 map.
Yeah, they're very similar. That would be infected ground.
Well, all in all, it's a nice little map. Obviously, just sort of there for people to run around in and check out. I like it because it's a really very effective use of the ground scale ships for sort of exterior decoration to make you feel like you're in a room right on the outside hull of this starship. Very well done.
The thing that really spoils the illusion that you're inside the Odyssey is how the perspective of the nacelles moves as you walk sideways.
I don't know, it should be pretty accurate. I mean, the
Because they really just don't.
ships
I
are
mean,
pretty much one-to-one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, but like I said, that's the only thing I could think of, and it's really not even something I would really pay attention to in a mission.
It's not something anybody could control either. So,
I'm looking at that
and you know
nacelle.
what?
It looks like it's right up against the wall of the
Yeah.
space dock. Tucker was right. It really doesn't fit in here.
The only thing that I would, and this is something unfortunately we really can't do, is the Odyssey is all about sweeping curves and stuff, and we have a straight up and down edge of this hole here with windows and everything, and I would love to be able to have like a sloped inward window, but obviously we can't do that. So,
what you can do is
we can't really do fluid line. We'd have to use a wall asset that curved towards the top, and we just don't have anything that would be adequate for the task.
No.
Well, what you could do is with like along the edges of the outside edges of the windows, do something where like put in a ramp or something like that to make it look like you're seeing the edge of the slope of the saucer. So make it look like the window is like cut out of a chunk of the saucer to make the windows be flat.
Yeah, you could do that. Anyway, let's move along. Not much Foundry news at the moment. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that's still related that's going on is going on around the skill revamp, which is coming with Season 11.5. Also coming with 11.5 is something I'm very excited about. A canon-accurate model of the TR-116 is going to replace the current model of the TR-116. So, I'm very excited about that. In fact, as soon as I saw the picture of it tweeted by whoever it was that was building it,
Samuel Wall,
S-Wall, I went out and bought one on the exchange.
Are we going to get that as a Foundry prop, I wonder?
That'd be pretty sweet.
Do we have? I mean, trying to think. Do we have any access to any sort of weapons as props?
We have a few. They're actually the TOS weapons, the TOS phasers, which I think they are the ones that are sitting on the old Drozana station in Night of the Comet. I think that's where they're from. That's about it as far as.
Oh, you mean to the stuff that one the device merchant has laying on her table?
Yes, the one that you have to make the nerve tonic for.
And
also,
a new. Every time I play that mission, I get the urge to just carry off everything on her table and then forget about it.
We also have a new campaign coming for the Admiralty system. It'll be a Romulan theme.
Romulans, which will reward on R&D.
Yeah, crafting materials.
If I remember right, you get the rewards you get in that one for completing the 1 of 10 of 10 thing is actually a package of upgrade things.
Yes.
Which are apparently similar to superior upgrades, except that they don't cost a lithium.
Yes. Which is great. Probably character bound. So it's not like you could put them all together on one character.
Well, character account. We don't know.
We'll have to wait and see.
Did the Odyssey updates make it into live?
I believe they did. That was in the patch notes for, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, they have Tribble and Redshirt separated now, so the Redshirt patch notes are the ones that are going immediately live, and they were in there. Not last week, I think maybe the week before. But in any case, we don't know exactly when 11.5 will be dropping, but I think they said in sometime this spring, so obviously next couple of months, probably, maybe sooner.
The general, I think, half-season updates don't typically involve a downtime, but we'll have to wait and see on that.
Yes.
It depends on what they do to the Foundry.
Yeah, it depends on what they do to the game and how far-reaching the impacts are.
Yeah, whether it might affect the Foundry or not, which isn't anybody's guess sometimes.
Oh, you remember how I made that one mission? treasure hunt with Teton, where you do that thing where you jump around on top of the giant stone mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I did a test play of that one and found that the giant stone mushrooms had somehow been moved, and now the mission doesn't work.
You will occasionally find that when we have a big update, or if you haven't looked at a mission after several big updates, you may find a few objects being moved around.
There's a tell that you will see when you load a mission and they've changed the base map. It will be a message about deprecated assets. A deprecated asset can be the map itself. And in that case is exactly what happened, because, you know, I go around, see all the things that, as far as I can tell, they're in exactly the same place as I left them, but one of them, which was sitting, you know, pretty close to the center of the top of one of the giant stone mushrooms, is now floating in midair, where you can't even get to it. And, well, you see where this is going.
Yeah, I know they make changes to the base map sometimes. I think maybe sometimes even without realizing it. Or just, you know, there are unintended consequences of some other change.
There was a Klingon light, which I think is still messed up, that the light itself got shifted up about a meter, except that the fire didn't, and so the fire's in the middle and the lamp is floating in the air. But it affected everything. Like Foundry, open mission, like anywhere that lamp was used was off as a result. So even things, and it's definitely something somebody who touched it and inadvertently didn't realize that they had messed it up. And
well, another example of this is that thing I made for one of the Foundry challenges, where I created this stone spiral walkway that went up around the outside of a small metallic spire. Well, the metallic spire was baked into the map because we don't even have that as a placeable asset. And one of the updates relocated the spire. I have no idea why that happened.
Like I said, I mean, even one change somewhere can ripple through and affect all instances of that object throughout the game.
Well, this is why we always recommend people go take a look at their missions after the big updates and downtimes, in case this stuff happens.
You need to look very carefully, because weird stuff can happen that has no obvious explanation. I mean, like the one update where there was that one map where they somehow accidentally cropped off half of the map from being usable space.
Yeah, ice caves.
Yeah. You can like run into the border of the map and you're like, wait a second, why is the border of the map in the middle of the room?
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about what we've been working on, and why don't we have our guest go first? So, Pax, what have you been working on?
A couple things, actually. First of all, this isn't really news anymore, but my entire Valley of the Shadow mission series for Romulan Republic is now available for Klingon allies as well as Federation allies. I finally completed the Klingon side trilogy. But more recently, I have been working on my new follow-up to Trouble in Paradise called Mirrorball, which is like I said, it's a James Bond homage in part, and it's also meant to address the issues left over from Trouble in Paradise, specifically the status of the ersatz Tox Utat that I had in that mission. I have to explain away how that is still a thing, even now that the real Tox Utat has turned up in the Cryptic Arc.
Yeah, there's always a risk that Cryptic might usurp some story element that you're basing your mission on.
Yeah, the more obscure the story element, the better, for terms of them not bothering with it.
Yeah, if they use Future Guy, I'm really in trouble. No, not really.
I noticed on this map you got 0 here, and I'm going to use both Zero and Mirror Zero as in cameo roles in my new mission.
Nice. Yeah, I used Perry Jim in one of mine, my little Starbase 1 history monument.
Oh,
I tagged him. I named him celebrity guest.
That guy deserves a theme song.
Absolutely. We'll see. Captain P.F. Dennis can sing. Maybe we'll get him to make a theme song. All right. Let's see. Green Dragoon. What have you been working on?
This weekend was kind of busy with me traveling, so I didn't get a ton done, but I did manage to accomplish two things. First off, I got my Agamemnon map asset list. Got that transferred over to the StarbaseUGC forums. So you can, it's a much more permanent location, and you don't have to already know the URL for my Google Doc to get to it. So that's there for anyone to use. And this, sorry, you can say something?
No, I just to say that that's a good place for it, and we'll have a link in our show notes as well.
Yes. The other thing I did is, you remember I showed off some of a starship interior I was working on for Part 3 with a sickbay and the stellar cartography.
Yes.
I have been going through that map and doing some resource optimization. And I've been trying to free up some assets so I can do some more detailed work in a few places. But mainly this has been involved restructuring how the floor works. So originally I had it so that you had like a big giant metal platform that was the floor, and then running through the corridors I had like a line of small rubber platforms that would kind of form the path that going through the middle of the hallways. Well, obviously that all those little platforms added up, and so what I've been trying to do is take those out, make the floor as a whole rubber, and then use larger metal platforms to basically border the walls. I'm kind of inverting how the textures work. The idea is that it looks the same, but it uses way less assets. And so far, it looks like I've freed up about 45 assets.
That's always good, and it can be a challenge to go back and try and reduce assets sometimes. It's not always the easiest thing.
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes it's as simple as like taking a configuration of walls, looking at it like, okay, so how many different wall assets did I really need, and how many of them can I get rid of just by changing the shape slightly?
Yeah.
I mean, I actually did that in one of my
what parts
missions.
of this map? What parts of this map maybe do I not need, so I could get rid of? Maybe I just built stuff because it looked cool, and I need to actually decide if I need that part. That sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean tightening up the space between points of interest, having fewer like side pathways. I mean, yeah, it's all about figuring out what you absolutely need and what is fluff.
Definitely.
But hopefully I'll get a much better looking cargo bay out of the deal. Which I didn't show too many pictures of just because it was it's basically just a metal room right now with a bunch of boxes in it. And it's like, I could do better.
Now, I think it was Admiral Aaron I asked you the other day, I think, what your intended sort of release window was for it. This part 3.
Yeah, and I got a in-game mail asking me that too. My intended release is before Star Trek Las Vegas, so I don't have to hear where's Part 3 all through Star Trek Las Vegas.
You intend this as a trilogy,
like
right? So we shouldn't be badgering you about Part 4 afterwards?
No, there is no Part 4.
Okay.
You will be back home safe and sound at the end of Part 3.
finally, after how many years? How many years has my main character been stuck in the, what is it, Gamma Quadrant, Delta Quadrant? I forget which.
I think I figured. Well, I didn't explicitly specify. I think I figured it was just over the line between the Gamma and Delta quadrants on the Gamma side.
Ah, gotcha.
But definitely about as far away as I could get it from either Voyager or Deep Space Nine.
Excellent.
Cool.
I forgot to mention Mirrorball, the mission that I'm working on, is I'm planning that for a late March or early April release. And I'm making pretty good progress on that, too. And another thing I should mention about my KDF version, Valley of the Shadow trilogy, that I forgot to mention was parts 2 and 3 are still in review, so you'd need to go into the review tab to find those. Just to give you a heads up about that.
Excellent. Well, I know I appreciate having, anytime I have more KDF missions to play, and especially KDF Romulan missions, because probably even fewer of those. All right, Mark, what have you been working on since we last got together?
I haven't really had a lot of time in Foundry, but, well, like I mentioned, I tinkered with that one mission and realized just how horribly broken it was. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to actually fix that because, well, it took me hours to figure out where to put all the assets in the first place. And it was literally my first Foundry mission ever, and I built it because I had no idea what you could do in the Foundry, so I did all this stuff, placing things on the map, yada, 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 yada. Later realized that one of the triggers that I had chosen to use was a very, very bad idea. See, because one thing that I was using was map pop-up dialogues, which map pop-up dialogues are best if it's a proximity trigger. So if you want the dialogue to pop up when the person walks to a certain location on the map. As a general rule, though, for story flow, and what would have been the best in this situation is if I had done a quest dialogue instead, which is, of course, something I did eventually when I tinkered with it, like 2 years after I originally created it. Oh, well. But anyway, yeah. It took hours to place things the first time, and not doing it again. Aside from that, I've been pondering things that I could do to improve some of my older missions because, people have pointed out things that just didn't really make a whole lot of sense in some of the cases, and, well, in some of them they were right. I mean, because, my Otha Patrol mission, which is still in the review tab, by the way, that one is one where it makes references to brokering a deal between these rogue members of the Borg Cooperative who are at Otha and not in the Delta Quadrant with the rest of the Borg Cooperative. And the Klingon High Council, but you don't actually go over the agreement at any point during the mission. That's something I think I should fix so that you actually, talk with various individuals with that.
Cool. All right. Well, let's see. I have not been in the Foundry much lately, but people who are following me on Twitter know that I've been undertaking this little project of a new character who is going to be using the original series Constitution class all the way up to level 60, which is certainly a challenge and already has proved to be a challenge because, with equipment and upgrades and that sort of thing, I mean, I already have, two epic dual beam bank phasers in the front of the thing, but with all of that, it's easy to kill things. It's not so easy to stay alive.
Come now, Drogyn. You're talking to someone who once took a tier 2 to Varro through a VA level fleet action.
Yeah, I'm certainly not the first person to do this, and in fact, I'm copying a build I found on Reddit, and it is quite a lot of fun. It makes it more of a challenge for sure, but it's got me in this huge like original series mood, and that has translated into all kinds of things. Like I have a Foundry mission to review later on that is sort of a TOS role playing mission. Which is a lot of fun, and there's more that I'm going to look into for subsequent shows. But one of the things I did is I used to get this book from the library when I was a kid. It's the Starfleet Technical Manual. It was published all the way back in 1975, and it's really cool, detailed thing. It has all the structure of Starfleet and all kinds of ship schematics and all kinds of nifty things.
Half of which were made up for the technical manual, unfortunately.
Oh, probably more than half. and a lot of it was, never really ever used on screen, although I think a few of the schematics and stuff made it on the screen in like technical readouts and stuff like that. But it has, one of the things I got it for was I remembered this really interesting space station it had. And Dragoon, I'm going to give you a screenshot that you can put on screen here in a minute. But the space station, it's almost shaped like a wheel, and it's supposed to be upright. So the outer edge of the wheel and those little circular things are ship docks, where all the ships can come in and get serviced and that sort of thing. And then on the inside is actually like a Dyson ring, if you all are familiar with that, or the more popular Halo from the Halo series, where there is a surface on the inside of the outer edge.
I believe the original description for that was Ringworld.
Yeah, Ringworld is another popular use of that. It's one of the...
I think that was Larry Niven's term he came up with like in the 1950s or something. I forget it when.
But it's one of that part of the theory of structures that I forget his first name, but Dyson is his last name, put forward. Like the Dyson sphere. Freeman Dyson. There you go. But a Dyson ring, except this one's enclosed. So it's got, and of course, this was put out right after the original series ended, and actually even before the whole thing got really popular again in syndication. And so he made up a lot of things that were later contradicted. Like on this space station, he put Starfleet Headquarters and Starfleet Academy, which we know to be on the surface of Earth.
Actually, they didn't establish the actual location of Starfleet Academy until TNG, where we have Picard go back to Starfleet Academy and reminisce about the good old days.
Oh, yeah. But of course, just right after TOS ended, there wasn't a lot of any of that established, so he had a lot of freedom. But I thought to myself, what about recreating it? You couldn't recreate this whole station because it'd be giant. But could you recreate some of it? Some of that sort of surface area, and how could you get it to look like it was curved? And I don't know. that would be the challenge. But there's all kinds of nifty things on the inside of this thing. It's set up like a habitat. There's homes, there's parks, there's artificial mountains, of all things.
Ooh, those sound like fun.
Yeah, it's a pretty nifty thing. So I don't know. It would probably be a really big challenge. You make like one section of it. How you could get a terrain to be sort of curved looking.
That's one of the biggest challenges is Doing forced perspective like that requires a carefully designed horizon.
Yes.
Something that we have, shall we say, technical limitations.
Yeah. But anyway, that's part of my musings in my TOS mood right now. It's been a lot of fun. I've tried like full immersion. I've got a playlist of music from the original series that I play when I do that character, and she's only 23 right now, but obviously we have some bonus XP, a whole week of it coming up starting tomorrow, so she'll be able to shoot up the ranks. And it's going to get harder as I go as well, unfortunately, just because everything's going to outpace that in terms of stats, or base stats anyway.
Well, one of my Delta recruits, I actually played through most of the what's the word for it? The Iconian War story arc in the Tier 4 version of the Defiant. That made things interesting.
I imagine so.
Because it's a heavily tactical focused ship, and fighting the Heralds is, well, let's just say that you need a bunch of heals and debuff cleanses that tactical ships don't have.
Yeah, I shudder to think what my original series Constitution would have to combat that sort of thing, because all I have is one of each bridge officer power, ensign level.
Doesn't the TOS kind of get a bonus spot?
Oh no, you're right. It has. Now I'm forgetting.
Oh wait, it has an extra console slot.
It has an extra console. It has an extra engineering console.
Not a BOF power, just a console.
No, just a console. Which I did a lot of grinding for stuff to sell, like what am I thinking of? R&D materials, especially, are good sellers. To get up enough keys to get low-buy to get the various consoles, a couple of different consoles that I needed. And then I'm going to get, the fleet vulnerability locator and the assimilated module, that sort of thing. So it's going to have good gear. As much gear as you can actually put on it, it'll be pretty top-notch.
I don't know, somehow I kind of think it's actually pretty accurate if you try to take a Constitution and bring it into the 25th century.
Yeah, something from 200 years ago. That'll be, it'll struggle. That's okay. So I have actually started, thinking in the back of my mind about doing a TOS themed mission. I actually had started writing one a little bit about. It was actually going to be for Romulan players, where you encounter a group of TOS Federation ships that got flung forwards in time. So I started thinking about, what's the other end of that? From the perspective of those Federation ships, you could do a mission that ends with them being flung forward in time. Then you switch to the perspective of the modern day Romulan and continue the story. So that would be fun to do, I think. Have to figure out how to make it sort of quintessentially TOS. What makes that, rather than just the generic sort of missions that we always do. And that's
what
not
I
always
think
an easy question.
Of what defined TOS compared to the later installations and even Enterprise, the prequel to TOS, is the fact that they would, they would have stuff kind of like the Davidian story arc is a good example of the thing that felt the most TOS to me, because, you have this threat. We don't know where it came from, but we know we need to make it leave. And it's just this, kind of off-the-wall thing and you just... It's not something that
a little more out
necessarily
there.
makes sense in
Yeah.
universe, even because it's just like so far.
Sort of
You know,
high
like you said,
concept.
it's just like out there.
Yeah.
Because well, that's the thing with TNG and DS9 is that they would establish things and then they would play with those things until they got worn and old. And TOS never did that. TOS would find a new thing, put it on the shelf, then go find another new thing.
Well, I'm thinking, where I need to figure out some place to be sort of out there in 60s craziness is the reason they get flung forward in time. Come up with something really crazy for that.
Backwards
part.
warp. Slingshot.
Ooh, I know. One of the experimental transwarp experiments with the Excelsior.
Well, I'm wanting to set it a little bit earlier than that. But a general transwarp experiment could be interesting.
Okay, I mean, it could be like...
Here, I just thought of an interesting idea. How, when you really scrutinize the parts of the motion picture that involve the wormhole thing, it's basically stated that the Federation has on previous occasions seen similar phenomena to that created by warp engines that were unstable. Maybe your ship was taking fire in combat and tried to do an emergency warp jump to leave the field of battle, only to find that their warp field was unstable and that it pushed them... It created an artificial wormhole that pushed them into the future.
Yeah.
Maybe their lithium crystals fractured.
Lithium crystals, not dilithium, right?
They originally called them lithium.
They originally called them
lithium. Or they changed it to dilithium.
I remember. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's what I've been working on. So let's see. Let's move on to mission reviews. Dragoon, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I finally got around to playing the next episode in the Photonomy series, which was Photonomy 5, Hidden in Shadows, which is by Bazag. The story starts you out on the bridge with a short little scene where you can talk to a few people, but you're almost immediately called away because there has been a plasma conduit rupture on deck 4, I think. So you go in to investigate and find that the holograms that you've been keeping prisoner have escaped and are running amok. So you head for... you note that the fire is dangerously close to one of the associates of the... I'm just going to call him the anti-hologram presidential candidate, the one you saved from the mob in the previous mission on the moon. You notice that the fire is near there and immediately suspect sabotage. So you chase them down, and you eventually come across your Talshiar operative assistant, who is confronting the anti-holographic candidate's associate, and basically calls her out because she says she's realized that she remembered from an old file that she recognized her as an Orion agent. And so you confront her about it, and she beams out and escapes. You still have a bunch of riotous holograms to deal with, so you fight your way to sick bay, where you find the anti-hologram candidate surrounded by holograms, only nobody's fighting. And so you investigate, and your doctor reveals that the anti-holographic candidate's actually been under the control of this Orion this whole time, and hadn't even realized that he had entered the presidential race. So he's been manipulating, and this kind of takes the steam out of the holograms trying to kill him. So you arrest a lot of them. Then you return to chasing down this Orion associate that took off. They are cloaked, but with the help of your Tal Shiar assistant, you are able to track down the cloaked ship, and eventually track it to a Ferengi Marauder, which you disable, and beam aboard the persons aboard, and you basically meet the after interrogating them at the bridge, you basically meet the most eclectic group of these, I don't know how to call them, anti-Federation insurgents. Basically, these are opposed to are upset with the Federation for various unspecified reasons, and are supposedly the ones behind these cloaked probes that are in orbit of Earth. After challenging them, they and their boastfulness reveal that they've got a ANAR, which they're using to basically telepathically control the probes. You take this and meet up with your Tal Shiar agent, and who isn't fully convinced that this is all that's going on. But either way, you've managed to detect a cloaked base not far, which you think is their base of operations. So you call in reinforcements and track down this base and go into fight off its defenses. But once you've cleared the area, you find that not only is there nothing, no ANR signs, no signs of any of the equipment necessary to pull this off, but also that the base's defenses are minimal. And aside from the few ships you take out, there's nothing really there. And on top of it, your Tal Shiar agent has gone missing and seems to have taken off. And that's basically where the mission ends. On the whole, I think this one kind of ended up feeling a little shorter than the previous ones. No, I think it was like probably like 4 or 5 maps, but it just seems like you didn't spend as much time on each. The bridge map at the beginning especially is very short, and I think probably could be eliminated entirely, as nothing really advances the story there. It's just a quick moment to talk to people. Maps were pretty good. Most of it was just, at least most of the ground maps were your starship interior. I don't think you end up visiting anywhere else. One of the 2 interior maps you visit is the same brig map from previous episodes. One thing I will say is that I kind of felt that this was probably the weakest of the ones I've played so far. For the main reason, it felt a little shorter. It felt a little strange that you're introducing yet another possible bad guy into the mix really late in the story. Because I mean, we're at part 5 already, so this has been going on for 4 episodes now, and so it's kind of been one of those that we've been running around this whole time trying to nail down who's the bad guy and how this relates to the to the holographic crisis, and so far the answer seems to be it's a bunch of upset people who haven't showed up anywhere previously, and don't seem to have any connection to what's going on with the holograms.
That does seem a bit interesting, yeah. But one thing that I've noticed that while it seems to make for a bad story, I mean it's kind of realistic to have like random events that just happen to coincide with something bad happening.
Yeah, and I want to reserve final judgments until I can play Drogyn's mission at the end and see how it ultimately is brought together. But I will say,
because
Drogyn,
I obviously, bring it all together perfectly and makes, all of the missions sort of, 5 stars in retrospect, right?
Absolutely. Or at least that's what I'm expecting out of you.
I don't know if I can live up to all that, but I tried anyway.
But anyway, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to be able to really give good feedback about the overall plot until I know how it wraps up. So I'm going to reserve any more thoughts on that until after next week. Like I said, I mean, I did see quite a few issues and bugs in this one. There was a few typos, but there was also a lot of cases where NPCs were acting strangely or doing things like trying to jump through invisible walls, which there were quite a few of to kind of try and control the progression of the mission. And in a lot of cases, I could kind of see where what he was trying to do, and it was just a case of it was not behaving live the same way it does in the editor. There was another instance where there was a bug where you are in orbit around Earth, and you go to warp to chase down this Ferengi marauder that you've discovered, and you go to warp, the warp trail appears, but Earth is still there, everything around Earth is still there. And you kind of, the way the progression ends up forcing you to go, you end up sideways to where the and somewhat out of where the warp trail actually appears. And then when you go to the point to exit warp, you're still in Earth orbit. There's no new planet. So it was like things like that just obviously were not working as intended. And Drogyn, you were mentioning to me before the show that Baz was kind of forced into work within a very tight time constraints.
Yeah, he had some scheduling issues and was very busy when we started the project and was only able to really start working towards the end. So that may account for the more shortened mission than the rest of them, and for some of the playtesting issues.
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm sure if you can get a list to him, he would be more than happy to smooth those out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a definitive list, but I mean, it's worth just going through and just going and doing a polishing pass. I mean, most of my feedback is kind of meant with the intention of good things to know for next time. Because obviously I don't expect you to go back and rewrite the story because I'm complaining about pacing or something. But it's more of just, okay, here's my points. I hope it's useful, and then whatever the next series happens to be.
Well, it's funny. It's like the next to last, the penultimate episode in a series is one of, I think, the harder ones to write and do. I ran into that when I was making my very first series for the Foundry back 5 years ago. That episode 4 of 5. I don't know. I had a hard time. I knew where I wanted the series to end up, and I knew where about the middle part was. I just didn't know how to get there, what to do in that part 5 or part 4, part 5 in this case.
I think this is actually a great discussion subject, and is to talk about. I mean, how do you handle the pacing in a 6-part arc? Because I've been thinking about this a lot, and it seems to me that 6 parts is actually a really hard number of episodes to pace for. Every time I try to break it down. Now, that's not to say it can't be done, but just that it's tricky because generally I would put the penultimate episode as the by the end of the episode, pretty much everything, all of the major plot points should be revealed, so that you can go into the 6th episode as the denouement and the final conflict.
That's pretty much what I did for Ghosts of War. That's a 6-part series, and part 5, as I've said many times, I treat that as basically my Battle of Hogwarts for that series.
Yeah. It shouldn't contain the final confrontation. You need to save that for the final episode, but it should be the turning point of the story where the hero kind of reaches wherever the climactic point in his own personal arc that he needs in order to face down against the final challenge.
Well, when I made my first series, I had remembered, let's see, I think it was, I was listening to a TV show commentary of something, and it was the writer of the episode was saying that, he thought in Act 3 or 4, whatever the next to last one is, there should be something to at least recap a little bit what has happened so far. Someone should, mention all of these things, and so everybody knows you're on the same page before you get to the big confrontation at the end.
Okay.
So that's kind of the approach that I took with my part 4 of 5. Is I started off with you being hauled in front of a committee of admirals to go over all of the crap that you've been doing. Because, there's maybe some questionable decisions that have been going on. And then the rest of the episode, I did kind of made it sort of a preparation scene for the final conflict. How in Nemesis, when Picard figures out that, they're warping back to Earth, but he's figured out that Shinzon's going to come after him. So they have that big montage of everybody prepping for war. So I did a little bit of that, only I took the idea of, gathering allies. Some of which decide to attack you instead of joining you. So I don't know. And I don't think it's definitely not the strongest episode. It's definitely not the best reviewed episode of the 5. So I don't know that that's all of that is.
I think we've shown that the final episode will always be the best reviewed.
That does seem to be the case. I haven't checked recently, but I believe my part 6 for Purity is still the best reviewed mission in the game. And possibly a lot of that is due to simply it being the part 6.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So if people like the series as a whole, they will rate the last part well.
Every time we have discussions about story pacing, I always think of the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Just simply because of the strange way the story was paced in that movie. I mean, obviously it worked, and it worked out pretty well. It's just that it's not exactly what you really expected them to do with the story pacing when the movie started. Because there's this thing.
I don't think anyone knew what to expect from that.
In the story, there's this little, I guess you could say this lull about halfway through the movie where they do this big reveal of who the bad guys are, what the bad guys are, what the bad guys are capable of, and then there's this thing where the good guys are like, now what are we going to do? And then, an hour later, they get around to the end of the movie. It actually worked reasonably well, simply because they had a plan for what to do there. I mean, because honestly, if it was like a TV miniseries, that would have been the perfect spot in the episode or in the story flow to have one episode of the miniseries end and the next begin. But, it's a feature movie, not a miniseries. So they just did the whole thing continuously.
So, Dragoon, we're speaking of story structure and that sort of thing. With your big series, did you have any idea where it was going after part 1 when you started making part 1?
About like 3/4 to almost finishing up part 1, I sat down and figured out what the general outline for the plot was going into parts 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of where I decided there was going to be a 3-part. So I generally summarized it as you spend part 1 figuring out what the threat is, part 2 getting into the horrible mess and having to get out of it, and part 3 rallying back and solving the problem, or in this case, getting out of the scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But that's more of a trilogy plot outline than a 6-parter.
Yeah. But what my point is you didn't necessarily have the entire thing outlined and sorted out when you started making the first mission.
I had a lot of broad strokes figured out. There was a lot of details that I came up with along the way. For instance, I don't think I planned originally for your character to get taken over by the Eidolon. I was originally just to go through the ship, help take it back, sort of a thing. And then as later I figured, like, well, this is really boring. You're just running through the ship. So I kind of
figure out something
decided to
spice
spruce it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had a couple of big ideas for part 3. But even then, I mean, there are things that I now have to account for. For instance, I introduced a security team in part 2, which wasn't originally my plan. And so I had to figure out what I'm going to do with them in part 3 because they're not in the plan.
And they have to stay alive because Sirboulevard's already used them in other missions.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't kill any of them.
Can't kill any of them. Unless you insert an extra character in there just to be killed.
Well, one thing that I was originally planning on making a follow-up to it, but what I originally wanted to use for the follow-up I realized was impossible, and I never actually tried making a follow-up for it, was not Treasure Hunt with Teton, but the mission I did that's simply named Treasure Hunt. In it, the premise of it is that the Federation has discovered a planet that the Borg had been in the process of taking over when Janeway shut down the collective with that virus. So this planet, which was at one point in time controlled by the collective, is now just kind of running on its own, and no one has actually any solid idea as to what's going on there, except that the Borg aren't actually in control of it anymore. There actually aren't any Borg on the planet at this time. So they send you to investigate because they have a bunch of... hold on a second. Sorry, I had to cough. Their initial scans showed that there were a bunch of strange energy signatures that the Borg technology was keeping contained, and that they couldn't remotely scan to determine what they were. So, they send you in to figure out what's going on. Well, you go through, find a bunch of strange artifacts that the Borg had isolated for later study by the collective, and that either they had decided to keep them for posterity or they simply hadn't finished analyzing them yet. But, you find the things. Then the last part of it, you find this portal device, which creates a portal to what I describe in the story as a crack in space between two universes. In the description of what the crack is, I use the analogy of a hole in the bulkhead of a ship. And so you're kind of like going between this hole, and I kind of... Well, I didn't really say that the Davidians belong there. There are Davidians living there. Why exactly the Davidians were there is something I didn't actually explain. And it was something I was thinking about getting to if I ever made a part 2 for that.
Sometimes it can be hard to figure out where to go if you had no plans initially. I made several missions that I have sort of sequels in my head for, that I have struggled to get made because I didn't necessarily know where I was going in the beginning. So I'm going to ask Pax the same question that I asked Dragoon earlier, because you've done several series. How much do you have planned out when you start part 1?
Well, for Ghosts of War, my very first mission series, it was still kind of a blank slate after writing part 1. The rest of the series didn't really start to take shape in my head until I started working on part 2. But fortunately, once that happened, the rest of the series kind of coalesced fairly quickly, and I wound up structuring it so that by the end of part 3, the first half of the series, all the major players had been identified, and then part 4 were just figuring out what their ultimate plan was. Part 5, again, was my Battle of Hogwarts, basically the climax of the series, and then part 6 was the denouement. But as for Valley of the Shadow, the prequel series that I made to that, that one I had pretty much, well, not completely mapped out, but at least I had the broad strokes mapped out right from the beginning for the whole thing.
Well, obviously it works a little bit differently when you're doing a big group project like Purity or Photonomy, where you have 5 or 6 people building simultaneously. So we had to have the entire thing planned out. So I revealed to Dragoon as we were prepping the show tonight that I had not played part 5 when I built part 6, because of course Baz was delayed in getting to build his, so he hadn't built it by the time I was building mine. But we had it all sufficiently written out before we started building that as long as his mission ended in the right place, mine would pick up right the same in the right place, no problem. So, that's kind of the advantage of having the whole thing planned out, is that you can build part 6 without having part 5 built.
Yeah. And
coordination pretty much requires planning.
Yes, absolutely.
As for the series that I'm in the middle of now, I was not planning on that being a series. I had originally meant Ghost Gambit to be kind of a standalone. And then I came up with the idea for a sequel for that, and that became Trouble in Paradise. And then eventually I wound up coming up with a sequel for that, which is Mirrorball, which is what I'm working on now. So, and who knows if I'm going to come up with a sequel to that.
Sounds like you have sequelitis. But anyway, let's see. I actually, moving along from talking about sequels and what have you, I also have a mission to review. And mine, as I said earlier, I went looking for TOS-themed episodes, specifically ones where it puts you in the time period, because that would be appropriate for my character that I've been working on. So I found TOS The Mind Trap by Velocitor. And it takes place 9 months after the USS Enterprise visits planet M113 in the episode The Man Trap. So after that episode, the USS Clinton was going to that system to do more studies, and unfortunately he goes missing, and your ship is ordered to investigate. The author puts you in the time period as if you are a starship and captain in the TOS era, which was perfect for me. Obviously, if you are going to play this mission, good to know that going in, which he does put it in the summary and opening dialogue and all that. So if you wanted to go change your uniforms, that sort of thing, you have plenty of warning to do that. So you go to the star system and you find the wreckage of the USS Clinton and beam aboard and discover that you have a problem with salt vampires, which are always fun. And something of the salt vampires that I had forgotten about from that episode is that they can make themselves look like people from your memories.
Well, it's actually a psionic illusion thing.
Yeah.
Where they, I don't think it was actually completely explained, but it's basically kind of like the Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
Except that you actually see a different person there.
Mm-hmm. And he uses that extensively throughout the mission, which is a neat thing. One of the interesting things is that in the space map at the very beginning of the episode, he has a couple of reach markers that are right in front of you. The first one, all it does is has fly-in text that has the title of the mission. Like it's, the old mission titles that you see pop up on screen in the episode of the original series. And then the next one gives you like a mission briefing. Obviously, I usually try and shy away from using reach markers in space, but these are fine because they're straight in front of you. All you do is move forward. One of the things he does is he has several dialogues that happen as if they are a scene on a Klingon ship that your captain would not be privy to. They're labeled as this. So, I mean, it took me a second, but when I caught on, I was like, okay, yeah, I can accept this. It's kind of a way to do cutscenes where everything generally has to be from the perspective of the player. This is one way to do something else. As I mentioned, the Klingons are involved. Initially, you are hostile, as befits the time period, but as you go along, you form a tentative ceasefire, which is a thing I kind of liked. This is obviously prior to the Organian peace treaty. Let's see. So you go down to the planet eventually, of course, and he has one objective where he tried to make it where you follow the creatures back to their lair, which didn't quite work. I assume it's problems with aggroing through invisible walls. So if I were him, I would probably change that to a friendly mob instead of an enemy mob, so they wouldn't aggro onto the player character.
Question:
as we know,
do we actually have the ability to costume a creature as a salt vampire?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that.
Because that was one thing that I remember being an issue back when they first added Tholians, is that we had Tholian mobs, but were not Tholian costumes. I'm not sure if the same is true of salt vampires.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about that either. So I guess the other alternative would be to set them further away so that they wouldn't get close enough to try and aggro to you. Hopefully. On that particular map, he also had some assets that float above the ground. That's obviously something that's very easy to have happen when you're dealing with ground maps that have variable terrain. One of the things that I really liked, you were talking about the salt vampires and their telepathic abilities before, is that when you do finally find the crew of the USS Clinton, they don't immediately believe that you're there to rescue them. They think you're salt vampires, and they're messing with them. That was a nice touch, I thought. And then later on, you figure out, I won't spoil it, but you figure out some of the things of he takes the idea of these salt vampires and what they were in the original series, and then delves into it a little bit more. You know, what are they? Where did they come from? What are their origins? And that sort of thing.
Well, the TOS episode suggests that they were, well, not necessarily a naturally occurring species, but a species that had been on the planet a long time until they had, I guess you could say, slowly run out of... Well, I guess they should say they ate themselves out of house and home.
Yeah, and he follows along with all that very nicely, I thought. And actually even ties it a little bit into what's going on in the current Stowe timeline. But it's a good little mission. He doesn't do a whole lot of map work, but what he does is usually pretty good, aside from the one bit about floating assets. There is one scene that's set on the bridge of the USS Clinton, where it's, you know, there's not going to be a lot to do on those bridge maps, and that's always a problem if you want to use one. There's not a whole lot you can do to make it a worthwhile visit, and not just, you know, you're there, do 2 objectives, you're off to another load screen. So, I mean, my suggestion there would be maybe to use the Constitution interior, which is a little bit bigger and has more rooms. You do a little bit more running and gunning and what have you, to take up some more time there. But otherwise, you know, it's a nice little mission. I have been informed of a couple other missions called Star Trek Continues that are TOS themed in a similar manner. I remember somebody popping up on the forums talking about that they were making those. I think they were inspired by the fan film Star Trek Continues series. All right. So, in our remaining time, I have a little activity that we hope to get the chat room involved in, as well as my co-hosts here. So, Rogue Enterprise on Twitter today was talking about, you know, what are fun sort of casual activities he could do with his fleet. And I suggested Star Trek Mad Libs. And if anyone doesn't know what Mad Libs are, it's a thing that came out, I think, like back in the 90s or 80s even, where it's like a story provided to you. Yeah. It's like a story provided to you that has certain words taken out. And what you do is you ask people to pick those words before you tell them what the story is. And then you put them in, and the stories could be wildly crazy or funny when they turn out when you put these words in. So I suggested him that he do Star Trek Mad Libs with his fleet, and then he create a Foundry mission from the story that they come up with. So we're going to do some Star Trek Mad Libs here. It's a very short one. I edited a little bit from something that Dayton Ward, who is a Star Trek novel author, posted on his blog. And then we are going to use that as the basis of a Foundry mission in a future show.
I just had a funny idea. What if you were to do a Foundry mission where it was all one map, so it was really short, but they had to pick like different key details ahead of time, and then the mission would rearrange itself based on what they said?
That would be really complicated.
It would.
Be a lot of trigger work. All right, so I'm not going to tell you guys what the whole story is. I'm just going to have you pick something for each of the blanks that I give you, and we'll take suggestions from the chat room as well. So we'll have to wait each time for the delay to get them. So the first thing is we need a destination. Obviously, this is Star Trek themed, so it could be a planet, could be a space station, could be something. You guys can throw some out here before we get suggestions from the chat room.
How about Starbase Magellan?
I'll go with a... Well, my suggestion would be a rogue moon that it has been ejected from its previous orbit and is headed towards an unstable planet. Or not unstable, but inhabited. Sorry.
That'd be a little
Interesting.
specific for a Mad Lib.
Interesting. Very specific, but interesting.
Yeah, I just couldn't think of a more concise way to explain that.
But actually, that could fit into something later on, so we'll keep that one in mind. Realm says Q's living room. I don't know how you could be en route to Q's living room.
Well,
That says Nimbus 3.
If there's a way to do that, we will find it.
And you said Starbase Magellan, of course, our exploration starbase. Well, I like Mark's because it actually is going to fit into something later on. So let's put that in there. A rogue moon that is heading toward an inhabited planet. That's something that Starfleet would send you on a mission to see if you could do anything about. All right. So now we need a thing, a mysterious thing that a ship might encounter in space.
I'll go with non-hostile cosmozoan.
Very TOS. Duncan Idaho says Lincoln.
Lincoln. Could we make Lincoln in the Foundry?
From the TN.
I don't think. I think we're banned from making actual historical
making
people.
real people. Yeah. Ranger Ryu says space whale. We do have access to the space whales. My thought was the giant space amoeba. Remember that?
Yeah.
Well, if we're
Valentine
going to
says
do
Klingon
presidents
titties.
in space, how about Teddy Roosevelt?
Andrew Jackson. There's a threat.
Yes, but Teddy Roosevelt can wield the
Garfield.
big stick at you in space.
I'm actually trying to remember if Garfield had any sort of interesting abilities like that, and I'm thinking no.
Well, considering we have to go with the what we have available in the Foundry, how about the space whales? The
Okay.
Gately. That work for you guys?
Yep.
All right. Now we need a scary, threatening action.
Impending doom.
A little more specific.
Klingons are trying to shoot the space whales.
Well, this is actually going to be something that this space whale is threatening to do.
Ew. Okay.
Selling
Vomit.
Girl Scout cookies.
How about eating Girl
I'm
Scout
sorry.
cookies?
Assuming the galaxy supply of Earl Grey tea.
There you go. Duncan Idaho keeps saying explode.
I like that.
space- do
just
space whales
generic
explode?
Why not?
Well, we know that they have a rather large ability to absorb energy from their surroundings.
Let's
I
go
mean,
with that.
you know,
Let's say
the one space whale thing pretty much shut down the Enterprise's power grid.
Let's go with that threatened to explode. Okay. And so we got to what are the repercussions of this? We need 2 repercussions. What would happen if a space whale were to explode?
Destroy all subspace within a light year.
No. That seems dumb.
We obviously need something biological.
I would go with caustic whale gut. You know, kind of like that microorganism that was in that one TNG episode that was eating holes in starships, or well, kind of like halfway between that and the xenomorph blood from the Aliens movies.
That would threaten all space travel in the region, and say maybe it's like a heavily traveled area.
Well, I mean, if it explodes, you end up with little pieces of cosmozoan going everywhere. And if somebody gets one of them on their hull, it won't necessarily destroy their entire ship, but it'll eat a hole in their hull.
Yeah, which is bad.
That's a cleanup that could last for generations.
Yeah. Like a biological oil spill.
There you go. Well, the space whales, whale oil.
Thereby spewing space whale oil into the
now we've got our moral dilemma too.
Cosmos. Save the whales because they're deadly. Okay, so how far does this reach if it explodes?
I'd go with half a solar system, maybe.
47 AUs.
There you go. Got to have 47 in the
yeah, that sounds about right.
47 AUs.
Which is a figure I use in Trouble in Paradise, too. I think it's I have Franklin Drake say, when the Dyson sphere blows, you want to stay at least you want to be at least 47 AUs away from that thing when it blows.
Throughout a 47 AU area. All right. Now is where we come back to what we had at the beginning. Okay, so here's this thing. While en route to a rogue moon that is heading towards an inhabited planet, the player captain and his or her ship encounter a Gekli, a space whale, which threatens to explode, thereby spewing space whale oil into the cosmos, which will damage starships and other things throughout a 47 AU area. And now the captain and crew must solve this escalating crisis before that rogue moon hits that planet. And before the space whale explodes, obviously. So, yeah, we have a basis of a little mission here. Have a crisis that we have to solve. Have a ticking clock.
And a bomb.
Yeah, a big one. Which I think would give you an excuse to use the Undine interiors as the interior of the land.
Yes. Actually, you know what? Believe it or not, you remember the Gum 2 episode?
Yeah.
The interior of Gum 2 looked very much like that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one of the things they didn't do in the TNG episode when they had the space whales was go inside one. How cool would that be? Maybe you could
but Gum 2 wasn't a Gekli. Gum 2 was a lot smarter than a Gekli, but Gum 2 was a cosmozoan, just like the Geklis.
Meaning a spacefaring organism.
Yes. And it was actually about the same size as a Gekli, too.
Yeah, true. So basically, I mean, the nice thing about this is it's like a 3-map mission, you know?
Well, is it a case that maybe we need to do another big build a mission in like 2 episodes?
I was exactly thinking that, since we haven't done that in a while. But obviously that will be for a future episode. So I will keep this around. And we maybe we'll do another one for the, when we can actually get to the, that rogue moon and see what sort of solution to that crisis we can come up with. But I think for tonight, we'll go ahead and stop here. So, Dragoon, if you want to throw up our contact info.
Okay. You can be reached at email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Drogyn can be reached at Drogyn1701. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman, and I can be reached at Greendragoon. And
And I
Pax?
can be reached at NCC89471. No dash, unlike my in-game handle, which has a dash.
Drogyn, did you want to plug any of the Foundry Exploration Initiative polls?
Yes, we are in the process of voting on the crew for our space station out of all of the excellent characters that have been nominated. Currently, we're doing Chief of Security. So if you want to vote, go ahead and roll over to the forums. I've been keeping the same thread going and just updating the original post. After this, we will have 5 more left to do. And once we're done there, we can start prepping for our mission building challenge. And that'll get the project going for reals.
All right.
Cool.
But for tonight, we will say goodnight.
Good
Night.
night.
Good night.